after Curse of Strahd, after like a very storied history of Barovia, you revisit it. You kind of give people more content so that they can stay in this domain if they so choose. How did you go about doing that?
So that is a really interesting thing that you brought up, which is something that I'm really proud about that Wes and I talked about a lot is, so it's the fact that you can actually play a campaign in Barovia, even if you've already played Curse of Strahd, even if you've already gone through the castle, even if you've already discovered the secrets of Strahd von Zarovich and his background and all of the things that led to him being this really monstrous, overbearing authoritarian power in Barovia, there are things that you can do beyond that that are really, really compelling. And it's actually very fun because those are, of course, going to be high CR types of encounters. So you've got the opportunity to explore what kind of pact Strahd made with the dark powers, what sorts of creatures are lurking behind, the mists and behind the scenes, and reaching their fingers out and trying to influence the things happening in Barovia. There's a place in Barovia specifically called the Amber Temple, which is where Strahd actually went after the events that sealed him becoming the first vampire, and that is where he made his pact with the dark powers. He, of course, did, the super creepy vampire thing of drinking the blood of the brother that he murdered. And we certainly don't shy away from the monstrous elements of his backstory. But, there are things that are still in Barovia. It's still this rich tapestry of threads that you can unravel and create this horror story. And it was very important to me to really make it a living, breathing setting, right? Where Strahd is, of course, the primary villain. He has full control over the entire domain. He knows everything that happens. As soon as adventurers show up, you've basically started the clock to when he going to start trying to antagonize you or test you, or see why you're there. He is always looking for another individual to become the Darklord of the place so that he can break the fact that he is captured and stuck in Barovia and can't leave. Can you imagine what would happen if Strahd von Zarovich was no longer tied to Barovia? What chaos and mayhem he would cause throughout all of the realms? Like, these are his goals, and these are things that you, as the DM, can play.
Why do you think Ravenloft is as popular as it is? Like, going back even to that very first module, I certainly have like my very strong feelings, but for you, what was it like coming back to this?
Yeah, I think that Ravenloft is as popular as it is because I think it just really hits those sweet notes of the type of horror that has persisted for generations at this point, the type of horror that's really capturing the imaginations of people, who have interacted with it. It's going back to the traditional folk tales, the traditional scary tales. What keeps you up at night as a child? Well, it's the fact that there is a monster lurking in the shadows. What kind of monster is that? Well, maybe that's a monster who, sees you as prey and wants to suck your blood. Maybe that's a monster who isn't actually human and who is just reanimated flesh looking for revenge upon the individual, who dared to curse it to this existence. It's all of these different things. And I feel like hitting those broad tropes and hitting those broad sort of visceral psychological elements and allowing people to play through them in that unique way in which D&D is this living interactive story is just very visceral and very satisfying for a lot of people. And being able to move that forward into the next generation and bring that to 5th edition players and folks who are just beginning their journeys along with D&D to create the hobbies that they love, that was really very, very satisfying and important to me.
Like, Barovia's scarier. It's not scarier. It is a very scary domain. And like what you mentioned, like Strahd is very aware of everything that's ever going on. That's not true of many of the Dark Lords, and almost all of the Dark Lords don't even know they're Dark Lords. But yeah. Strahd is uniquely almost fourth wall breaking in the sense that he's aware of his imprisonment.
Yeah, he absolutely is, right? And one of the options that we put into the domain write-up is that Strahd is intrigued with the player characters because he thinks that one or more of them might actually be able to replace him as the Darklord. And so there is an option, there's a seed there for Strahd actually putting these challenges in front of the players to test them. And if they continue to overcome it, then there may be, of course, because it's your game as the DM, then maybe you can create a plot line in which, maybe the players are trying to succeed because they're wanting to stop Strahd, but when they actually succeed, they become the Darklord, and then they've got to figure out how to deal with that mess, right? I think Strahd being a complete irredeemable monster in that way, the ultimate villain, was really, really important to me and was a really difficult concept for me to engage in, just for a number of different levels, but just the sort of like emotion of how somebody like that thinks was very difficult. And I actually ended up going back and forth quite a bit, and I consulted with another writer who's listed in the credits. It's Alexander Sandgrim, who's the director of operations for Kobold Press and is a writer on a number of different projects. And we really just like batted back and forth. How are we going to make sure that Strahd is presented in a way so that it's very clear that he's not irredeemable. He's not this romantic villain. He's not something to be desired. He's a predator. He's evil. He's scary. And he's something that you want to stop at all costs. And that was really important to get right for me.
Yeah, it really is the apex evil, and there's just nothing there to be redeemed. Like, it's not Bram Stoker's Dracula, or kind of like these more romantic takes on, Dracula and vampires. Like, Strahd's just the worst.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I really think that that's sort of a later iteration of the vampire trope. Like, Bram Stoker's Dracula is terrifying and awful, and to the point where in the very Victorian way, there are people who encounter him and just pass out and faint from the sheer horror and terror of what it is that he's done. Like, Jonathan Harker on several occasions discovers things within the castle as he's discovering what Count Dracula really is, and he just can't take it. His mind just can't take it. He sees him crawling. He sees Dracula crawling along the outer walls of the castle, going down to prey upon the village. And he goes, down into the basement, and he sees, the brides that Dracula has created, and he can't handle it. And so I am really interested in that concept of the vampire, much more so than the sort of, sexy, redeemable version of the vampire, which absolutely has its place in stories, but I just don't think this is that story.
Right. This is, I mean, because in Strahd is as well, very much this is almost alien. Like, this is not someone who has motivations or thinks in the way that you do. This is someone who is hundreds and hundreds of years old.
Absolutely.
They're not playing with what you're playing with.
Sure. Yeah. Think of the worst person that you've ever met, the cruelest, most entitled, most predatorial person that you've ever met. And then imagine them hundreds of years down the line, not actually being human and not having any of the vulnerabilities that the human body has, like not needing to eat normal food, not needing to sleep, not needing to, have any of the sort of physical needs met, right, that you would have as a person, and just kind of imagine what they would become. And that's Strahd.
Yeah, his only anchor in the world is his imprisonment in it.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yes, and he's become obsessed with the fact that he feels entitled to Tatiana. He feels I've done all of these things, so therefore I should have what I want. And he doesn't see her as a person. He doesn't see anybody as people. He doesn't see the villagers as people. He sees himself on another plane of existence, and all of them are just these rats, these cockroaches that are there to perform in his little bug circus at his pleasure. And that idea is just kind of terrifying, right? Because they are people. There's a village. They've got a burgomaster who's their leader. They're just trying to survive. They don't understand why life is so difficult and why these awful things keep happening. Some of them, I think a lot of them, don't even realize that Strahd is a vampire. They just see him as the nobleman on the hill who deigns to come down and do whatever he wants occasionally and then leave. So just thinking of that sort of that divide, I think really kind of puts him into context for who he is.
When it comes to how all this relates to D&D, like what this is such a dramatic shift, even compared to any of the other worlds, like say Dragonlance or anything that has been before.
Mhm.
When you're in Ravenloft, the rules have changed.
Yes. It's true. Yeah, so I think Ravenloft is really, really interesting and I think effective for me as a horror setting because it's got that plot element of the mists. So the mists can sort of roll into and bleed into any other plane, any sort of other setting, and pull the characters in for a single session, an arc of sessions. There can be, kind of any length that you want, but you can pull them off of whatever plot is going on, or you can have them trigger something and then that pulls them in because now they've gotten the attention of the Darklord, and the mist pull them into whatever realm you want, and you can have that story and resolve that story and create a very tight sort of limited horror story and have that resolution happen, and then they can go back into the world and just go, what happened to me? What did we just accomplish and achieve, or what was just taken away from us, and how do we sort of like reckon with that? And it changes the whole perspective of the campaign.
Thank you so much for watching. We've got a lot more videos about Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft coming out. We will be covering almost all the domains, I believe. I'll try my best as subclasses and all the different player options as well. If you like this video, you can purchase the book itself through the Amazon affiliate link in the description. You can like, subscribe, click the button so you get notified every time we come out with a new D&D video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a wonderful time and that you're excited for this book as much as I am. Thank you.